The Ad hoc Committee on Gang Violence and Youth Development will now come to order. This is a special meeting, and I'd like to remind everybody present, if you'd like to speak to this committee officially on the record, please fill out one of these cards in the back there or by the entrance, and then bring it over to the clerk to my left, and we can call you up in order of the items that you wish to speak on. We will have public comment on every single item. If you'd like to speak to issues relating to matters that are not on the agenda before this committee but are relevant for this committee, you can make comments at the end of the meeting in general public comment, and we will give an opportunity for that as well. So at this time, I'll be announcing which items we will be hearing today. We'll be hearing items 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are 5 items on the agenda. Item number 1 is going to be held over to a subsequent meeting. The advancement project staff had a conflict in schedule, so we will reschedule that at the appropriate time that we can have the appropriate presenters present on item number 1. So item number 1 will be put over to a date uncertain at this time. We need to make sure that the advancement project schedule meets the schedule of this committee, and we will hear that item. So now we will go to item number 2.
Item number 2 is a Board of Police Commissioners report relative to efforts to enhance coordination, collaboration, and communication with gang intervention workers when responding to gang-related, associated, and motivated incidents.
Anybody here from the commission or the department or? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Captain Regina Scott, Assistant Commanding Officer at Gang and Narcotics Division. We're here because you asked the department to look into our protocols that we had for gang intervention, to see what lessons learned that we had, and then what are we going to do for the future. We prepared a report for you, which I think you have in front of you. And when we started doing an investigation, the review to see what we actually had on the department, we were very surprised that every area within the department has some type of component of notification to intervention prevention. The 2 areas that are real organized and actually have protocols as we look at is South Bureau, as you noted in the request, the South Bureau gang homicide, and then Valley Bureau. They actually have a pretty good comprehensive program. We looked at taking that model that they had at South Bureau and try to duplicate that throughout the city, and what we found is that different intervention work different, and we want to be able to give that autonomy to the divisions so that they can work with the interventionists how they best see fit. The final outcome of that is that we did see that there is a need to try to make it more uniformed. And so my division will be coming up with protocols as far as notifications on gang-related incidents that are motivated with the potential of retaliation type of intervention. We're going to try to develop that through RACER so that it'll be a universal, so that RACER would make the one notification. And we're working very closely with the mayor's office and the people that they're hiring. But we also are not going to be put in that box that those will be the only ones that we will work with. So we will work with ones that don't actually get the funding, and we'll also work with them as long as they meet our protocols and they meet our needs. One thing that we did find out is that every gang intervention it's not an umbrella. You know, the rolling 20s cannot work with the rolling 40s. We have to make sure that we have the right people in the right place that deals with that. Some of the recommendations that we came up with are that we're going to, we established a department-wide gang interventionist liaison, and that's Sergeant Curtis Woodall, who I brought with you. And I want you to speak with him or at least have him have a moment, because he is the guy who actually implemented the program in South Bureau Homicide. He was the one who met with them. He was the one that identified that there was a desperate need for training. So far we've had 2 academies. We've had one through And I don't want to steal his thunder, so I'm going to let that piece happen. But I will let you know that our department understands that this is a priority, that our department knows that that we can't arrest our way out of that. This is the year of the gangs. One of our top initiatives is that we increase our efforts in intervention and prevention. So you will see that it will be a piece of ComStat that is coming up. So if we know that there's a shooting or a series of shootings, that commanding officer will be addressed and asked. One of the questions that they will put in, did you involve any of the intervention prevention component in that? You will see in the near future coming up directives and protocols on how to make those notifications. And then the last piece before I let Sergeant Whittle speak is we really don't have an effective tool to measure the effectiveness. Most of the stuff are intangibles. Most of them are stories that we can tell on incidents that happen. And we are coming up with a form, and I know we're working with Jeff Carr in the mayor's office with that type of form so that we can get those incidents and feedback on that. And so we'll be able to produce some type of documentation so that we can show you how effective this program is and how much that we use them. Right now, we do not have that type of mechanism. So that is one thing that within the next coming months that you will see that we will start to implement. And that being said, I know I talk a little fast, but I apologize for that. I'm going to introduce Sergeant Whittle, and he can talk about where he's been, what he sees in the future, and then his new position as the department-wide intervention prevention liaison, where we're going to go with that.
Okay. I have a couple questions for you before we hear from Sergeant Whittle. You mentioned at one point in your dialogue that you said year of the gangs. Did I understand you right?
I know that the city is going to come up with, and it won't be the year of the gang, but I know that we are coming up with gang initiatives. That will be announced through the city in the upcoming future. And one of the things that when they had the dialogue of putting it together, they wanted to have the emphasis that will be intervention and prevention. There's a few others, like reduction of crime, the injunction, some other ones that will come up. But particular for this particular case, I just wanted you to know that it is a focus, it is a priority for our department this year, and there will be emphasis, and you'll start to see some of the things that you asked for in your initial request in the motion. Those things will come to light. They'll be documented. They'll be a part of, memorialized and incorporated in our policies and procedures.
Thank you. Also, when you mentioned about the department working with the mayor's office on a form, and also the formats, et cetera, that are developing within the department. When you work on that form, I would, before it's finalized, I requested the department that they work with this committee and either presenting to this committee, or if some of the information is too delicate, that you meet with my office so that we can look at it as well. I have the unique experience of having worked on this matter both as a state legislator and now as a council member and chairman of this committee for quite some time, and I have some unique perspectives. Probably no better or worse than any other perspective, but we've been working on this so long, and my staff, I have staff working full-time on this, so I think that 10 heads are better than 9, or 20 heads are better than 19, or what have you. So we'd like to make sure that we, before that is finalized, that we are able to give some input. Understanding and respecting that this is a product of the department, we'd still like to have some input on that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Sergeant Wood.
Mr. Cardenas, I have a lot of respect for your staff, and I work with them constantly as we speak. Without a doubt.
I'll keep them around. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I guess I'm here to talk about the training. Well, let me stop. Let me reverse. 2 years ago, when they threw me into this job, we were really not in the business of working with.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And here we are, and we have made some extraordinary strides. At the same time, it's a little gray out there with this, and the biggest thing is the training. I like the kills, the training. I like the advancement. I wish that there was one, but I don't see it as being one. So that's where we're at right now. We have moved along with the leadership of the City Council and the Police Department in ways that I would never have thought we would be at this moment. But I'm going to have to tell you, I am completely stuck at this point, because it seems like we are still not moving to the point where it is a great collaboration with all the entities that should be involved. And so with me is when I leave out of here, I will talk to Chief Beck about, let me do something else. Let somebody else bring some new blood in there to move forward with this operation. So the biggest thing for me at this particular point is training. We have to get the intervention workers trained up and feeling comfortable about the protocols in order to speak and work with the police department. For the past 2 years, I have worked with them in a very, very good relationship where we have actually resolved a lot of the issues that have been going on within the department and the community. And so I say the best information that you're going to get is actually have the intervention workers themselves come up and speak about the collaboration that they have with the police department. We know that it's working. We know that it's doing well in the South End and also in the Valley. But yet the protocols that the captain has just spoke about is really not in place yet, but we're getting there. And so I'm very optimistic about it. I know that 10 years from now we won't have this conversation. It will be inputted within the infrastructure of the department.
But, excuse me one second, Sergeant Whittle, how long have you been working in this environment or this area that has now culminated so far? And as you and I agree, we still have some ways to go. But how long have you been working on these elements of responsibility?
Well, really? About 13 years, really. But the primary job today, about 2. Mm-hmm. About 2 years to have full time.
Yeah, but you've been in and around it and interacting with it for about 13 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All my life, I would say. I was born and raised in the city of Los Angeles. Went to all the schools. I'm 53 years old, and I was a gang-infested neighborhood that I grew up in. And so I've had it. I know it. I breathe it, I taste it, and I feel it. And so on that same point, let me just say this, that we need to get to the point, something that really hit my heart was the removal from the gang injunction. And you walking across the street with a young lady, I don't know who that young lady was, but you was walking across the street with her, talking to her, explaining to her what this process was. We need to get there with the rest of the individuals out there. This is a very, very problematic problem that's going to cost a lot of kids their lives if we don't get this thing straight. And I'm starting to see a lot of people that don't want to get it straight for whatever reasons. I'm uncomfortable with that.
Well, the fact of the matter, Sergeant, is I understand that last point of what you just said, and I don't think you're speaking ill of anybody or what have you. I think you're being honest and frank about when you deal with human beings. You can look at a couple, you can look at a family, you can look at a community, you can look at a department, you can look at a city family, you can look at a state, the state of California, you look at the country. And even the best laid plans or the best efforts or the most well thought out, well done effort isn't going to be agreed upon by everybody. There's always going to be it a couple, a family, a community, a city, a state, a country, there's always going to be some well-meaning individuals that are doubting Thomases or that say, you know what, it's a fine idea on paper, but it'll never work in real life. All that kind of stuff. And I appreciate the fact that the police department in and of itself is close to 10,000 people. How are you going to get 10,000 people to agree wholeheartedly on something as unfortunately controversial as, well, there are people out there in the community who are interventionists who can actually be assistive and part of the solution when it comes to reducing crime, especially violent crime in some of our toughest neighborhoods. I mean, just that statement alone, if you ask 10,000 officers or 40,000 city workers or 4 million Angelenos that question, you're not going to get 100% of the people saying, well, that's a great idea, it's going to work. You're going to get quite a few people who doubt it, who don't understand it, or for some reason don't feel it's necessary to even try to internalize it and then decide if they think it can work. So I understand what you're saying, and I don't think you're saying anything ill of anybody. I think you're just being frank and speaking to the human element we have to deal with. And the fact of the matter is not all good people agree, and not all good, well-intended people believe that a particular solution or method is in fact going to be successful. And unfortunately, that's one of the things that is probably never going to change. We're always going to have some individuals within the police department, here on the city council, people out in the community who feel as though such methods or such efforts are really not going to be real solution-oriented efforts, that maybe we shouldn't even do it, or maybe it's futile, or maybe instead of just doing that, we ought to spend that training, as we're talking about here, and just give extra training on and having officers spend more time training on how to respond to alarms or something. You know, in other words, some people are just going to say, look, that's time wasted. Why are we even engaged in that?
Hey, boss, let me tell you where I'm at. This is a 13-year-old out of John Muir High School, and this is her letter.
The young lady?
Yeah, the young lady. Her name is Veronica. Her name is Victoria. She's 13 years old. She goes to John Muir Middle School. She's missed 67 days, and she's been suspended 41. And this is her letter that we took out of her book. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. In blood we trust, in crabs we bust. If you kill a crab, you win a prize. If you kill a blood, your whole family dies. Let it rain, let it thunder, bury a crab 6 feet under. Let it rain, let it drip, bust a crab in his lip. Let it rain, let it storm, bust a crab in his arm. This is a 13-year-old from John Muir Middle School that we're working with. So, yeah, I'm taking it personal because I believe that we can change this. I believe that we can get to the kids and all this kind of stuff, and I love what you just said. It is very inspirational to me to think that a city leader is feeling that way about this particular issue, because we do have a problem here. And so, yeah, I did take it personal. I heard my captain over here, she kind of grunted when I kind of got personal, but it's all because I know we're close to fixing this. I know that we're close to solving some of these solutions here.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And the police department is a big part of that solution. And whether we like it or not, the mindset and the messages and signals that come out of the police department on this issue of intervention is critical, because one press conference from the police department can sway the minds of Angelenos and elected officials, etc., and the rhetoric that is used there can either sway people to be more ready to buy into having real attempts at making this work and helping it work, or it can swing the pendulum the other way and people saying, yeah, it's never going to work. Even the police department says it's not going to work, so why should we bother? Because if the police department says it's not going to work, then it's not. And with all due respect, that's the kind of sway that the police department has. More sway than I have. And I work on this every single day. But my respects to the officers who are out there on the street. I don't strap a gun on every day. I'm not asked to go to a crime scene and engage. I respect our respective roles. But at the same time, everybody needs to be mindful when it comes to policy and trying to create holistic solutions. We're in this together. We all have a different role. And part of our role is to try to make sure that we look at what the potential of these things are, and then try to make the best of it. And that we be honest with each other. Maybe the next time you come before me, you end up telling me, well, there's a certain element that was worked on and thought of and developed, but that component should not be part of the solution. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I respect that. I appreciate that. I expect that. If we do anything less than that kind of communication and that kind of honesty, then all we're doing is playing politics. And we already have 15 council members, and we already have a mayor and a controller and a city attorney. That's plenty of politicians in this city, as far as I'm concerned. We don't need 10,000 more. So your dialogue with me, I take very, very seriously. I mark your words. I actually write some of them down. Because I say, ooh, that's interesting. I need to find out more about it. Because I'm listening. This is a policy body. This is a place where some of the policy goes forward. And yet at the same time, I respect and understand that within the police department, for example, some of the policy day-to-day, you don't come to the council, nor should you. Because that's your business. That's your day-to-day. That's what you do on a regular basis. And then some of the policy goes to the police commission, and that's where you need to discuss that. But this particular policy of how we're going to address this issue holistically involves all the city departments, whether we like it or not. It involves the county of Los Angeles. It involves the state of California. And as far away as it is, it involves Washington, D.C. as well. And that's why we have this dialogue. That's why I appreciate you coming forward and responding to our request to work with this committee, to report to this committee, to dialogue with this committee, to be honest with this committee. And sometimes I appreciate the fact that you are political enough to understand that maybe sometimes you need to come to my office and say, Councilman, we need to talk for 15 minutes. There's something that's very delicate. Not that we want to keep it from the public, but it's kind of draft. You know, sometimes around here we put draft on a document. In case somebody gets it, they don't go run around saying, look at what they're doing. No, it's just a draft, right? We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do, what the final product is, before we bring it out, before we implement it. And sometimes we're going to have to talk. We've talked before outside of this committee. Again, I respect that. But eventually, those elements end up getting spoken of and addressed in public. They do. And with all due respect, the example I'll leave you with is, you know, good parenting involves this example. If you're going to lead and raise children, the parents, if they've disciplined enough, and for some reason either got it from their parents, it passed down, or read it in Dr. So-and-so's book or what have you, need to understand, you don't argue in front of your children with each other about addressing their issues. Because then you look divided. And even little children know how to manipulate the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I give you that example because I respect and appreciate the fact that there's a lot of contemplation that goes on. There's a lot of thought that goes into these things. There's a lot of consideration before you come before an open public committee like this and speak your mind on behalf of the department and report, etc. Yet at the same time, we're not doing anything bad by having other conversations as well when we're in the development stages or trying to understand how to best address things. So I just want to make sure, and I'm really having I'm sorry, Captain, your name again?
Regina Scott.
Regina Scott. I don't think you've testified to this committee specifically before. But the reason why I'm having this dialogue is that some of us have been dialoguing for years and months. And I want to let you know that this committee isn't about gotcha. It's not about catching what you say and you know, trying to embarrass somebody or something like that. This committee is about making sure that we support the fact that people are putting energy, time, and thought, and in some cases, their heart and soul into their work. And to me, that is a mixture of what makes good policy. So understand that there are some things as you're developing that, as before you come to this committee, if you ever have to give my staff a call or talk to me or sit down for a few minutes, and maybe you're just perplexed and you're saying, maybe we don't understand what you're asking for, Councilman, but we think this is what you're asking for, but honestly, that doesn't make sense. And then if you said something like that, hopefully I am going to make sense, and I'm going to say, well, I'm glad you said that because that's not what I mean. What I mean is this. And then you might say something like, oh my gosh, now I get it. That's good stuff. Now I know what I need to do. I'll be ready on, you know, next Thursday, more than happy to report. Now I understand what it is you're asking for. There's no need to hide the ball. There's no need to be concerned about how I'm going to react if you question me.
Okay.
And just like I try to be respectful to you as you come forward, you know, I'm sure you know how to do the same in the other direction. Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
So we're developing right now. It's not at the beginning in the sense that the department has certain portions, certain areas are more advanced as far as their interactions and interplay with interventionists, et cetera, and the department is developing how to figure out how to be flexible enough, community by community, yet at the same time have some protocols that actually more formally allow there to be better communication, more effectiveness, and hold people accountable. Such as, if you're going to communicate and you're going to call yourself an interventionist, you've got to know what you're doing and how to communicate that. And vice versa, if those people who have fulfilled those responsibilities deserve to be communicated with on behalf of the department in the same manner, with the respect and attention they deserve, so that everybody can do their respective jobs and be effective. So, you know, showing up for work and doing a job doesn't mean that you're being effective. And I'm not talking you, I'm talking just anybody in any line of work. But when you have ways in which to measure, if you have ways in which to know that you are prepared and what is expected of you or someone else you're interacting with, in my opinion, you have more effectiveness. And you're able to improve. And just like I'm sure the police department, the training that goes on today, for example, at the training academy, is different than it was 10 years ago. And we all think it's better, we hope, right? And it's different than it was 25 years ago, and it's different than it was 50 years ago. So this is, in fact, a learning process as well. So I respect the fact that we are going to, the department is going to develop protocols, yet at the same time understand that, oops, in 2010 we say, well, we've been trying this one element, and that doesn't seem to be working real well, but we got feedback, right, from our officers and interventionists or what have you, and we think that that element, we can change it now, and we'll be more effective. And being effective, I agree, Sergeant, is that more lives are saved, less lives are lost. I think that's ultimately what one of our main objectives is.
Absolutely.
Safer streets.
Absolutely.
Safer streets. I want to ask you some questions. When it comes to the training academy, the potential for having this involved in the training academy, any status on that? As far as intervention, preparedness or intervention understanding from officers as to what intervention is, and also from interventionists understanding how to interact with officers.
Well, sir, as we speak, I'm on my way to Maximum Force Academy that has about 30 individuals in it as we speak.
Good.
That I'm going to go and speak to them, and also have invited the command staff in South Bureau to speak to them also. So it's Law Enforcement Day. So that is already happening. It's already a class graduated with about 40. Also, the Advancement Project had about 27 graduates. So we do have somewhat of a number of individuals that have some type of training going on, but we don't have an accurate number yet, and we're working on that.
And also, since currently today there seem to be two training opportunities on this matter here in the LA area, I'm assuming that they're both different.
Yes, sir.
They focus on different elements. Some of it is crossover. They may touch on similar issues in their own respective ways. But at the same time, I'm hoping and expecting that there is a level of effectiveness, and there is a level of, when somebody gets a certificate from one of these trainings, it's expected, and rightfully so, that they are better prepared to do their intervention work, and or if any officers or anybody from law enforcement were to go through this training, that they're better prepared and more understanding about how this interplays with them and interventionists and officers, and trying to figure out how they can do their respective jobs and make the streets safer.
I'm going to be involved
There's
with
some
both.
semblance of success as far as your opinion goes. There's good stuff coming out of these academies?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. The communication, and I guess we can't really categorize it, but I know for a fact crimes and violence have reduced due to the collaboration with the intervention workers in that particular command staff that's in that division. Those are the individuals that really are starting to now talk more with the intervention workers. They don't talk directly to me anymore. They talk directly to the captain.
That's a good thing.
And that's a great thing.
Absolutely.
That is a great thing. That's where it should be. And so you see more and more of that happening now. And also, I didn't mention the fact that we're in the process of also formulating a academy training for police officers. It's in, I think it's a 16-hour course that we actually talk and have a big portion of intervention
Has
work.
funding been identified for that?
Pardon me, sir?
Has funding been identified for that, or it's kind of pilot-ish right now? They're seeing how it works? Or?
No, Chief Beck is heavily involved in making sure it happens. I think the first class will start in March of this year. And I don't think it has anything to do with the funding. I think he's just going to make it happen.
Okay.
And it's just a collaboration with the Sheriff Department and LAPD.
Okay,
We're
good.
both doing it and going post-training.
Good. Yes.
And just, he touched on the police academy that we are developing, and that will be for our officers, because he talked a lot about what we're doing for the interventionists. And then we do a gang symposium each year, and we've done 2, and in each of our gang symposium, there is a component of intervention prevention. I think the first year we did it, we actually had Bo Teller and Skip Townsend actually came in, and they talked about where they came and what they wanted to do. So they actually spoke with and had interaction with all of our gang officers.
The attendees listening are officers?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that included every officer, every gang officer, and the whole entire department. We had injuries and stuff, but we had a 98% compliance. And we also, in that particular symposium, we invited outside agencies, because we have our outside, which is like Inglewood and Hawthorne, that borders our borders. They were also invited to that symposium. We anticipate having a symposium in 2009, and in that 2009, there is part of the post curriculum. The intervention prevention is a built-in piece in that, so that will continue to grow on that.
You know, there's something interesting, and this is a very delicate idea to try to implement. And my wife would probably disagree with me, but I do listen to her.
Okay.
When she tells me I'm wrong, when she tells me I don't know what I'm talking about, when she tells me forget about that and just do it as I say or whatever, right? I do listen to her, and I do try to put my ego aside and say, okay, what is she really saying? What can I really take from this? Even though it's a moment of disagreement. It's a moment where I'm being told, sorry, but you're wrong. I do believe that we can learn a lot when people feel strongly about something, even though they disagree with us. And I'm wondering if there's a way in which the department can actually talk to a handful of officers who admittedly think that, talking to interventionists, it's got to be the dumbest thing in the world, right? And talking to interventionists, come on, it's a waste of time. But those people, half of them are have been in and out of jail in the past. See the tattoos on that one guy? Got him all over his neck. Why are we talking to this guy? If a handful of officers who are in the field, who for some reason have their strong beliefs and are good officers and are well-intended, just don't believe that this is a part of what they do in their day-to-day work. If they could actually dialogue freely, maybe volunteer, kind of like what they do in campaigns. What do you call it? Focus group. Kind of like in a focus group setting. And I would imagine it would have to be on a volunteer basis, because if they do it on the clock, then it's public information and all that crazy stuff, and then, somebody would make hay out of it. And all we're asking of them is that they just be honest. And I think there is something to learn from that. Perhaps there are some roots of threads of commonality amongst those individuals who might actually be vehemently disagreeing that this is even worth the department even engaging in. Yes?
We've actually done a couple of those under Chief Beck and Commander Gannon, where we've taken the younger officers and the senior officers and brought in the intervention workers to speak to them. And it was like oil and water at first, but the dialogue actually turned out to be pretty good for all. And we do see some change in there, but it's still a ways to go.
But see, what you touched on a healthy dialogue. You touched on an activity that is along the lines of what I just described.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about having them just be frank and honest about why they think this has no place, or it's not going to work, or why are we talking to these guys, or this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, that's not what I got signed up for, if I'm going to go to the academy, et cetera, why should I even deal with this kind of person? You get what I'm saying? At that level. You get what I'm saying? My point is, I'm wondering if there's a way in which the department can do that, and looking at the legalities of, you don't want that dialogue to be used against somebody or what have you. And that's why, like I said, in campaigns they have focus groups where they just get a group of people and they just ask them some questions, and the people are looking and listening, not to agree with them, but just to understand and better understand how to better work through those issues and address those mindsets. I'm wondering if it's a possibility to do something like that.
You know, I want to say it's happening as we speak. I want it, and I can't go into all the details. I know for a fact they brought me over there for that because I've been in the gang business for almost 20 years. And so to have me come over there.
On the good side, of course.
On the good side.
Yeah.
On the good side. On the good side. But, you know, I say that because nobody in this room hated gang members more than I. And they brought me over there, and it transformed me into becoming a partnership with the gang members and talking with them and realizing that they have some self-worth in there that can help us, and we want the same thing. And so I'm talking, but at the same time, I say again, the training is the most important because it's muddy on both sides. It's issues, the same thing with the gang members.
Sure.
They can't have that, don't want that. You know, the same thing as police officers. Police officers just will not accept that. But because we have some really, really great leaders on the department today, they're not force-feeding it, but they're allowing it to happen. And they're not trying to force it to the fact where you have to force-feed the officers so they go out there and they really kind of just poison it.
Yeah, if somebody's going to be engaged in something as dynamic as this, there has to be
a buy-in.
A buy-in, absolutely. In the heart and in the mind.
Yes,
There
sir.
has to be a buy-in. It can't just be follow these 10 steps and, you know, go about your business. Well, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. We do have a public comment on this item. You don't have to get up. There's only one public comment card. Dr. Perry Crouch?
First, giving honor to God, who's the head of my life. I've worked with you when you put together the shift partners, so I know your heart and I know your commitment. I've worked with Captain Scott and Sergeant Woodall. I'm one of the elder statesmen. I've been doing this for 25 years. When I spearheaded the Watts Gang Truce in 91, 92, and also the Watts Gang Task Force. What we're putting together, and we need your help, some of the downfalls with intervention has been they never put together what's called a code of conduct, in which, out of the academy, in which, come on, man. I know, this is little Zachariah Crouch. He's
I'll give him a chance to speak.
Okay. And so, what we're asking is that, a lot of the downfalls that intervention workers have came into is not making the distinctions between being a homie and a homeboy. A homeboy is someone that growed up in the neighborhood and understand all the dynamics. A homie is one that side with wrong. In other words, my homeboys is out there doing wrong, I can't really go against them because I'm a homie. And making that distinction with intervention, sometimes intervention workers get caught up in how do I better serve my neighborhood as a peace ambassador opposed to a homie. And so with the instructions and the I would say putting together that code of conducts would also give us that leverage, because I've been in intervention when it was us against them. It's no longer, it's a partnership now. And our roles as interventionists, is twofold. The first fold is rumor control in the neighborhood. There was a shooting. Our main thing is to find out where that shot came from. A lot of times, shots come from places that you have peoples and everybody have what we call troublemakers in our neighborhood, and all they do, they hood bangers. They just lay in the neighborhood and they look for things to happen so that they can get everybody pumped up to go and do some negative things. That's the rumor control. And then another role that we have to play is called crowd control. That's when a shooting occurs in the neighborhood, and we have to control the crowd so that law enforcement can get in, set up the boundaries where they can do their investigation and get the ambulance in so that they can get the bodies out. And then there's a third point in being able to relate with law enforcement, not work for them, but work with them. Funerals is a good piece. Basically, the repast and having law enforcement where you buy in and law enforcement patrols to make sure that everyone's safe. So we have a role that we have to adhere to, but we are professionals. And those that don't want to be professionals, and we asking that with your leadership, you could help us put together that every intervention worker would have to sign that code of conduct. So you don't have what we had in the past. So you're not going to be an intervention worker from, say, 9 to 5 and then be a gangster from 6 to whatever. No, either you with us or you're not. And so with that, I just wanted to say, you know, with Sergeant Woodall and Chief Bratton and the whole lot, they have been very, very receptive in working with us. Chief Garner, Chief Beck, Captain Scott. So in your office, as the leader of the ad hoc committee, the Honorable Herb Wesson with Project Safe, Councilwoman Janice Hunt. So across the board, it's gonna happen. But we have to fine tune it to make sure that we don't leave no one left behind. And I love Sergeant Woodall. He's been there on both sides. I mean, we was hardcore when he was just out there, man. His whole thing was hook and book, and now on the other side to understand, that a lot of gangs in the neighborhood are just there for protection. And then you got the hardcore. Now in the hardcore, you want to go out there and shoot and all that, you got to be out. We're trying to get you out of our community. So it's not we upholding wrong, because that's not what intervention workers do. Our main thing is public safety, making sure that these little ones right here can have a future. And if there's any questions, sir, I'll be glad to answer.
Well, thank you, Dr. Crouch. I do believe that every day that I wake up is an opportunity to learn something new. I was one of those individuals who grew up in a neighborhood that was rough and tough, and I guess I would be described as a homeboy, because I knew very well who the bad acting individuals were when I walked to and from school, when I came out to my front yard, when I went to the grocery store with my mother. I could tell the difference. It's unfortunate that some people have to grow to understand those things in certain neighborhoods, and and the difference between a homeboy and a homie. I've never heard that before, even though as soon as you said it, I can agree with you. Yeah, that's the difference. There's a difference between a homeboy and a homie. And unfortunately, some people feel that in certain neighborhoods, there's no such thing as a homeboy. They're all homies. And that's part of what we gotta get rid of. That's part of what we have to combat. And that's part of the mindset that needs to change. Because even just like the rich neighborhoods, just because they have children who are rich and have everything that they could ever want or need in their life, does not mean that they don't sometimes act like homies themselves. Might be a different tune, might look different, but it's still unlawful, certain activities, no matter what side of town you're on. And the same, in those neighborhoods, we should never consider that just because kids are rich, they're bad. At the same time, just because they're rich doesn't mean that they're all angels either.
That's right.
But unfortunately, when it comes to rough neighborhoods, tough neighborhoods, too many people think that if it looks like a homie, it must be a homie. Well, guess what? Maybe that's just a homeboy trying to blend in a little bit so that they can survive. Just to get in and out of their house. Just to be able to have some semblance of freedom in their community. So I want to thank you for enlightening this committee and speaking on the record, certainly, and everything that you said, especially when it comes to those two terms that have been in existence for such a long time and have been in my mind and my heart for a long time, but I never had a word for it specifically. Young man,
You got something to say, Zach?
what's your name?
Tell him what your name is. Say
Over here, up front.
here.
Look, this way.
What's
Hey,
your name?
right here. Hey, look. What's your name?
My name is Zachariah.
Zachariah?
Yes.
That's an old-fashioned name, huh? Comes from way back. And the other young man?
This is Marcus.
Marcus? He's a quiet one. Okay, Marcus. Thank you, Zachariah. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Dr. Krause. Yes.
I just had one thing to say about, and it goes back to the training that Dr. Cross was talking about, the community engagement advisory committees and that community-based gang intervention model, definition and structure, all of that. That's why the training is important, so we can determine all that stuff that we're talking about now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. With that, what this committee will do is we'll note and file the LAPD recommendations and instruct the police department to report to this committee in 90 days with the status report of the gang intervention efforts in an expansion. With that, we'll instruct the LAPD to incorporate the community-based gang intervention evaluation measurements. Also instruct the LAPD to further explore the ramifications of establishing and implementing the racer notification system. Also, that the PD shall report back to the ad hoc committee relative to LAPD recommendations relative to skill set and tools needed to facilitate a working relationship with public safety entities within the City of Los Angeles. Also to report back to the ad hoc committee relative to their recommendations regarding the outcomes of the PCITI Training Institute and the Community Violence Intervention Academy. And also, prior to the expansion of the Gang Intervention Collaborative, to instruct LAPD to report back to the ad hoc committee with a status update. I know that's a mouthful, but what Michael from my staff will do is he'll give you all the, yes, okay, you have a copy of those instructions. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing and hearing from you soon. Thank you very much. Okay. With that, we'll move on to item number 3.
Item number 3 is the Board of Police Commissioners report relative to the process and protocol for reporting and documenting hate crimes.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Captain Ann Young, the Commanding Officer of Detective Support and Vice Division. With me is Lieutenant Horvatich, who's the OIC of the Hate Crimes Unit. We submitted a report probably a couple months ago now to the Police Commission, and they were concerned about whether LAPD had actually established a protocol, standardized protocol for reporting of hate crimes. And we have.
Oh, good.
Yes. In fact, when I made this report before the Police Commission, we had 19 areas. Now we have 21 areas. So all 21 areas are on board as far as the actual reporting of hate crimes. It is standardized and it is recognized by Post. In fact, Post has used the LAPD model for the entire state of California. So it's really, really tight. Detective Support and Vice Division, my hate crimes unit, we have citywide jurisdiction over all 21 individual areas. We have quarterly meetings with in each area we have a hate crimes coordinator, and we have quarterly meetings with that coordinator to talk about hate crimes, training, what's up, what's down, how can we improve matters if at all possible. We do have, and I was listening to the last presentation, anytime there is a hate crimes in the city of Los Angeles, it does go through RACER as a notification to the commanding officers. So I'm able to read that notification, and if I need to have my units respond to assist that particular area, they're right there to do it. In this particular report, it also wanted to know what are the individual areas doing to interface with the community. So we sent out various emails to the commanding officers. We have some areas, honestly, that are doing a great job and some probably not so good. But the areas that are really doing a fantastic job is West Valley. They've had a tremendous amount of hate crimes over the last couple of years, mostly vandalism.
Mostly vandalism against like synagogues, churches, things of that nature?
Yes, exactly. Captain Zipperman, who's out there, he has put together a committee called HEAT, and it's the Hate, Education, and Tolerance Committee, where he has West Valley members, clergy, LA Unified School District, the mayor's office, ADL. He also has put together a junior CPAB, where the children actually go out to the schools and talk about hate crimes, things of that nature. In Hollywood area, they were talking about putting together an outreach center for the gay and lesbian community. That hasn't totally come to fruition yet due to resources, but my unit, actually Lieutenant Horvitich's people, are actually going to see if we can staff some type of drop-in center in the Hollywood area for folks to come actually out there and make reports. We have taken hate crimes very seriously, and we're looking at various best practices, not only in Los Angeles, but all over the country. We just came back from a field trip to Santa Barbara and met with the chief of Santa Barbara Police Department, Chief Sanchez, who's very involved with their Museum of Tolerance. And they have a wonderful program out there, and we actually went through it, where they will take the community members through and they look at the Holocaust, and it's probably about an hour presentation of going through a film and actually viewing the museum. We've been in touch with our own Museum of Tolerance here in Los Angeles, and they're behind any type of program that we want to actually come up with. When I met with the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles, we found out that there is a hate crimes course that's post-certified, offered through the Museum of Tolerance. It's hate crimes for the first responders. I don't know how it's fallen off the map, but when I asked them, well, how many LAPD people have actually gone through it, they said a handful, probably 5. Oh. So we are going to see if we can not only send initially our hate crimes coordinators, the 21 individuals. We are meeting with actually Captain Scott and Captain McCarthy this afternoon to talk about gangs, their gang folks actually going through hate crimes for first responders, and our jail personnel to see if they will also be amenable to going through that training. We met with the chief of LA Unified School District the other day, Chief Mannion, to see what type of liaison do they have with LAPD and hate crimes. Actually, he said that the areas are doing a great job liaisoning with the school district. We are going to invite a representative from the school district to attend our hate crimes quarterly meetings to keep the information flow going. And I also told him about the Museum of Tolerance, and he agreed it had fallen off the radar a little bit, and he's going to get his school police back involved in that as well. Town hall meetings, we're going to see if the areas can go back to that 5-6 years ago. That used to be kind of the mantra, having a series of various meetings. See if they can get a little more advisory councils involved in their areas. But as far as reporting, community efforts, I think we're doing a pretty good job. We need to probably beef up our training. And at the academy, there isn't anything, there's not a formalized program at the academy. We're not involved in teaching, but we're actually going to become involved and actually teach in the supervisor's school. And I believe at the recruit level, they are receiving training, but probably not many hours. So, if the lieutenant has anything else to add with the report, but that's where we stand right now.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. So it is in place. Obviously, as you just pointed out, there are hopefully going to be more developments and more incorporation formally, for example, with training. It sounds like you look forward to making progress there as well. And then certainly having our officers take advantage of what's already in our backyard, such as at the Museum of Tolerance. So bottom line on when it comes to having more officers go through the Museum of Tolerance, do you have a line on how to enhance that?
Yes. I'm meeting, actually lots of meetings, with Dr. Luann Pinnell, who's in charge of our training unit at the academy tomorrow, to see how we can start infusing that with the officers actually going. We have almost 10,000 officers now, and it may take some time, but we thought if we started with those small groups, those groups that are very important, like the gang intervention first, and then see if we can actually get something a little more standardized.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind is I happen to know a handful of people who've gone through the training academy for the police department and have gone through the training academy for the fire department, and the departments make their facilities available to them if they want to, on their own, exercise a little bit more or train a little bit harder or what have you on their own time. I'm wondering if there's some way that the department can give incentive to our cadets to, I think that's what you call them when they're going through there, or what are they called? Trainees?
Recruits.
Recruits.
Yes, sir.
Recruits. Okay, the recruits, maybe there's some way to give them a little star or an extra credit on their diploma when they graduate, if in fact they come back with a certificate on their own time. Probably have to deal with the union on this too, but not make it mandatory, but also, look, I've seen these guys and gals where they're out there in the park, you know, working themselves to death, and they've been working them to death all week, and yet they're physically, on their own time, making sure that their bodies are stronger. Mm-hmm. Well, this is a tool of the mind and the heart of being a more enhanced professional with just more knowledge, but it just happens to be in the mind. So I'm wondering if there's any way that you can incentivize and then also track what the percentage of individuals are actually on their own taking advantage of it. It's my understanding the Museum of Tolerance makes it free, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure if all of a sudden they got this barrage of requests of 60, officers at LAPD asking all within the same month, they'll have a special thing on Saturday just for them, I'm sure. I'm very familiar with the Museum of Tolerance. They're very accommodating. So I'm wondering if that's a way in which you can do it, because right now everybody's, strapped for resources, et cetera, but time is the one thing that if people on their own volition want to go ahead and enhance their professionalism above and beyond the call of duty, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and I will definitely check.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody from the public wishing to comment on item number 3? We are on item number 3. Public comment is now open on item number 3. Seeing and hearing none, this committee will concur with the action of the Public Safety Committee. Public Safety Committee took action on January 5th, 2009, and this item will be noted and filed, or this LAPD report and recommendations will be noted and filed. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move to item number 4.
Item number 4 is the City Administrative Officer and Community Development Department reports relative to Los Angeles Bridges 2007-2008 General Fund savings. This item was also referred to Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay.
Burr Taylor from the CEO's office.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. The report before you addresses the proposed use of the General Fund savings from the 2007-08 Early Bridges program. In June 2008, the Council approved a total amount of $7 million to fund contracts for the intervention and prevention services.
Otherwise known as Bridges 1 and 2, right?
Yes,
okay.
Through December 2008. And the funding was supposed to be from the Community Development Block Grant General Fund, the Mayor's Contractual Services, and $206,803 was supposed to be from prior year Early Bridges General Fund savings. The Mayor's office provided that funding up front. So this report provides recommendations to reimburse the Mayor's contractual services for that amount.
Well, hold on, we need to clarify. I remember the dialogue in this committee, and there was a little nervousness. Well, how do we know they're going to have salary savings? Well, we said, trust us. Everything is going to be fine. And sure enough, it appears that they had salary savings general fund savings in the amount of $345,462, correct?
Correct.
And at that time, we were, for discussion purposes, dialoguing with the Mayor's office on a round figure of $300,000.
That's
correct?
Right.
So at this time, what we realized is the appropriate amount is not $300,000 to reimburse the mayor's office, but $206,803.
Correct.
Okay? And that's your recommendation,
Yes.
that we not reimburse them of the round figure that we're using for discussion purposes, but that we use the actual figure of $206,803.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Continue.
CDD also proposes to expend about $68,000 for audits and fiscal reviews of the Early Bridges contractors. They propose to amend an existing contract with Simpson & Simpson and increase the amount and extend that contract term through December 2009.
Okay, and it's the amount of $68,000. Again, at one point in time, it was assumed it was approximately $45,000 that they would need. But now the correct, most appropriate figure to be utilizing policy-wise is $68,000.
That's correct.
Okay, and that $68,000, just like the $206,803, would be coming from the savings of $345,452.
That's correct.
Okay, continue.
So recommendations allocated a total amount of $274,803, and the remaining amount of $70,659 would have, we've read it to the general fund, but I understand that the CLA has a recommendation for part of that, that remaining.
CLA recommendation?
Morning, Meg Barclay with the CLA's office. We prepared an amendment at the request of your office to reimburse a prior expense. I believe it was out of the Council District 14 Clark's fund to pay for a needs assessment in one of the grid zones. At that time, it was requested that subsequent funding be identified to repay that, and so the source was identified for that.
And the amount is?
$40,000.
$40,000? Okay. So of the $70,659, the CLA is recommending that $40,000 shall be considered the identified funds that were contemplated at a future date, and it seems like that date is now.
Yes.
That those funds now have a place of which to be reimbursed from.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that amount is $40,000. So that leaves us with $30,659. If we adopt that, not yet spoken for.
Yes, and that amount would revert to the general fund to be used, I guess, next year.
Unless this committee makes a different recommendation.
Yes.
Which I'm ready to do. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's all.
Okay. With that, it's my understanding that some communities are wanting to figure out a way to continue some of the safe passages programs that are going around in the city. Interestingly enough, and very accurately pointed out by CDD and the mayor's office, most of these safe passages were actually, the funds were accumulated and found in the CDD savings annually. So it was never formally at the beginning of the budget process. It was something that thankfully the CDD was able to address that need in the communities for their safe passages, mostly through their savings, salary, mostly from salary savings out of the CDD. Now that the mayor's office has taken on the responsibilities of intervention and prevention, unfortunately, the mayor's office was not asked, nor did they accept the responsibility of funding the safe passages programs, and mainly and respectfully to the mayor's office, because no one at that time was ready to address the issue of funding. So with that, come January 1st of this year, officially the safe passages funding no longer had a source within the city of Los Angeles. So what I'm going to recommend in my motion as we pass this item is that we approve the CAO recommendations along with the CLA amendment as was read into the record a few minutes ago. And in addition to that, between now and the budget committee, that the remaining $30,659 be looked at to appropriately fund safe passages programs that are ready and able to utilize those funds responsibly. And it'll be up to the budget committee to determine which of those safe passages programs will be funded. And I say those that will or can be funded because, for example, at 27 middle school campuses, there were safe passages programs. And all told, the amount of safe passages need that was being met is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. So $30,659 will only be able to address those programs that are ready, willing, and able to responsibly utilize the money, and unfortunately, not all of them. And I've already been told by one council member that she already has a safe passages program that she feels is just the perfect place to utilize those funds. So she will have to petition the budget committee, and hopefully that particular safe passages program will get some portion of this funding, and hopefully we'll be able to maximize it amongst the most needy and the most critical. So with that, those are the actions of this committee. Any other discussion? Anybody here for public comment? I do not have public comment cards on this item. Seeing and hearing none, public comment on item number 4 is now closed. With that, that is the action of this committee, and we now move to item number 5. Thank you so much. And also, I'd like to point out, I really appreciate the effort and the attention that was placed on this by CDD, also the CAO's office, and the work of the CLA, because this was a very nervous moment. I remember the discussions when everybody said, well, what if they don't have the salary savings? What if it never materializes? And the mayor's office was willing to go ahead and front load it, and everything turned out just fine. So thank you all for all of your diligence and all your efforts and all your work. Thank you. We're on item number 5.
Item number 5 is the City Administrative Officer and Board of Police Commissioners reports relative to the 2008 Weed and Seed Grant funding for Harbor Area. Public Safety Committee considered this matter on July 28, 2008.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Can one of you briefly explain to me what weed and seed means and the difference between weed and seed?
Certainly.
I'm assuming it's an analogy to like farming or something, but.
Yes, good morning. I'm Captain David Lindsay from Harbor Area, and with me is Officer Terry Pacheco. She oversees the spending of the funds, and I also have Sergeant Catherine Plows, who oversees the Community Relations Office and Harbor Division. Weed and seed's a term. The weed portion is dedicated towards or refers to law enforcement actions that tries to weed out. When you take weeds out of your garden, you're taking out the bad parts. And then when you seed, that refers to the prevention component, or you're fertilizing youngsters in the community to bring out the good portion of it. So the weed is law enforcement, such as gang intervention or gang prevention by our gang officers, as well as truancy, curfew, crime prevention, responding to certain types of crime, and then the prevention aspect of it, the seed aspect, has a whole host of programs we use.
Okay. As you were saying?
Well, I was just going to mention basically what the report in front of you was.
Mm-hmm.
It's an approval request from the police department to enact a professional service agreement for the period of January 1st, 2008 through December 31st, 2008 to fund the continuing weed and seed site in the Harbor Community Policing Area. Funds from this agreement provided Harbor Area officers with approximately 479 hours of sworn overtime.
Okay. Now, I can see the direct correlation between weeding and officer hours, because that's the primary responsibility of policing, is to police, to make sure neighborhoods are safe and to do that element of the job. So I can see how that correlates directly, unequivocally with weeding. But how did that 479 hours of law enforcement overtime contribute to weeding? Weeding, but how did it contribute to seeding?
Okay. What it does is it helps supplement the officers that we have assigned to our Community Relations Office. And some of the programs it helps us run in conjunction with our community-based organizations. We have the CalPAL program. It's a summer and after-school program for ages 13 to teenage years. And during the summer times, we hire workers and volunteers to work with kids within that age group. The other things it allows us to do is work with the the Harbor Gateway Neighborhood Council, the Mothers Group, which is involved in leadership classes and development for adult females that live in the area, in the target area. We work with ShareFest that provides funds, counselors, and helps us with a leadership program at Cal State Dominguez Hills. The Myler Adult Learning Center provides ESL classes year-round. We work with the Boys and Girls Club of Harbor City, Harbor Gateway. There's a program that Officer Pacheco here works. It's called VITA, which is the Volunteer Income Tax Assistant. And what that has done is there's a volunteer that's an accountant in the area. In conjunction with the IRS and Officer Pacheco, they assist residents in the target area to file their taxes. It has brought back approximately $100,000 in income tax returns for approximately 100 people, so it's roughly $1,000 per person. It's helped bring back. It also helps us work with the Toberman Settlement House, which does gang prevention and intervention services as well as drug prevention.
Okay, so the Weed and Seed program is a collaboration, and the weeding part is mainly done by the police department. But within that, the police department actually refers and collaborates with identifying who needs help or what have you in the community on the seeding part.
Sir, just I'm going to interject. Officer Pacheco is the one that manages the grant. The grant has two parts, a weed part and a seed part, and we're only responsible for the weeding portion of those 479 hours. There's a whole nother portion of monies that are from that grant that are strictly dedicated towards seeding. And there is a whole committee that Officer Pacheco meets with on a monthly basis, and they spend the seeding money. I don't know if attached to the report is the budget, but it breaks down all the seeding components, and they are responsible for those funds. So the 479 hours is what we're concerned with here today, but there is a whole additional component with other large portion of the monies that is strictly dedicated towards seeding.
Okay, all right. And with the limited resources that we have to address the issues of violence and all the need in the community out there in that part of the city, how's the department addressing the increase in gang-related crime in the Harbor area?
Well, Harbor has had about a 22% decrease in gang crime for 2008. We don't break it down by particular target area, so that's area-wide. However, referring to this particular area, we now have, in 2008, we obtained a gang injunction against the Eastside Torrance and 204th Street gangs, which have been responsible for a large portion of the violence and racial issues up there. That went into effect last year, and that has been effective in quelling quite a bit. We're targeting some of the main shot callers of 204th Street as a way of additionally putting pressure on that gang to diminish its activities.
So that's one of the main elements that has been implemented most recently.
Correct, the gang injunction.
Not the only thing going on, but one of the most.
That's one, yes.
Additions to the tools that you're using out there.
That's correct. And part of the overtime funds, when we get racially motivated crimes, we take those especially seriously, and we'll use some of the overtime funds to kind of flood the officers, flood the area with officers for the next few days to not only let the residents know that we take these crimes seriously, that we're doing everything we can to investigate them, and as well as to protect them from further violence.
Okay. Anything else on this item? Okay. Thank you very much for the clarifications and the report. Is there anybody here to speak on item number 5? We're on item number 5. Public comment is open on item number 5. Seeing and hearing none, item number 5, public comment is now closed. With that, this committee will now concur with the action of the Public Safety Committee. It took action on July 28, 2008, to approve the CAO recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the itemized items on the agenda for today's committee. Is there anyone here who would like to make comments, general public comments to this committee? Is now open for general public comment. Young people, what's up? You had a bet and you lost, and you had to sit through my committee, or is there anything you want to add? Sure. Come on up. Sit down. What's your name for the record?
My name is Charlie Chen. I'm from Soka University of America. We're doing a research on...
Sorry, which university?
Soka University.
Soka?
Yeah.
Out there in the mountains? Are they still out there?
Orange County.
Oh, in Orange County.
Yeah.
Do they still have the campus out here in the...
No, I think that one's sold. And
yeah, I think the Santa Monica Conservancy won that battle. They now own it. Okay.
Yeah, so we're down in southern Orange County, and we're doing a research on how public policy affects juvenile justice. And I'm wondering how will the Community Violence Intervention Academy plan to not only intervene but reduce recidivism rates among juveniles?
That's an interesting question. I think the question is probably a bit mixed. The academies or the training opportunities that seem to be in place today. There seem to be 2 right now in the city of Los Angeles, at least that I'm aware of. Their objective and focus is to try to bring professionalism and understanding to the certain roles of intervention and prevention out there in the day-to-day world. But I'm trying to be careful not to speak directly to item number 1, because we are still in committee right now, and right now it's general public comment for things that are not agendized. So their purpose, and it's their purpose because they're organic. They created their own academies. They weren't created by the city of Los Angeles. Their purpose is to try to bring a better awareness and professionalism amongst those individuals who are engaged on a day-to-day basis in those kinds of activities, be it interventionists, police officers, other parties that are engaged in that day-to-day violence intervention and prevention and working to make our streets safer. So that's generally what they're looking to do, at least by my understanding.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you would have probably heard more specifics, at least about one of the academies. On item number 1, they called it the Community Violence Intervention Academy.
Mm-hmm.
You would have heard more about them directly and probably heard more dialogue. But since it was, because due to scheduling conflict with the advancement project who was putting on that academy, we had to postpone that item for today.
Okay.
Anything else? Did you learn anything today?
Yeah, actually.
Give me an example of something you feel you've learned.
Well, there's
You're welcome to step up as well.
Oh.
Then you're gonna have to fill out a card.
Well, we learned that the issues of 13-year-old and really young juveniles. It's a serious issue here in Los Angeles. We don't really we're not really exposed to those issues down in South Orange County, but we also sort of learned that the police department has a really big role in persuading the public regarding public policy.
Yeah, definitely. I thought those just really appreciated the fact that dialogue was brought up so much in the community, because I really just had no idea that there was that much, I guess, humanistic stuff going on in here. So just really appreciate it.
Did it catch your attention at all regarding the Dr. Crouch, who on public comment gave an example of how he feels that there's a terminology, a difference between a homeboy and a homie? Did that catch your attention at all?
Absolutely, and I really appreciate that. As far as what he's saying is, I've been able to work with a lot of like community people, community activists and stuff like that, and it was really nice to see somebody like that come in here and lay something real out on the table, and for you to to respect that, and to even what's the word? You got it. You got it. That's great.
So it's one thing to try to create policy, but it's another thing to be able to understand a lot of the nuances that go on in communities, because unfortunately it's not black and white. Let me give you an example, since you're college students. Some of you might not appreciate this, but I believe very strongly that this is as fine as an example, or an appropriate example for people to dialogue when they talk about gangs, when they talk about that kind of element being out there, and how do we address it, and what do we do with those people. You go to university and you have fraternities, for example. And with all due respect, when I was in college, I wasn't a member of a fraternity, but I remember walking by some of the fraternity parties. I remember talking to young women who talked about some of the things that those guys did to them when they were drunk and things of that nature. And with all due respect, that was an organized group of individuals who condoned illegal activity and who encouraged it and engaged in it, and actually it spilled over into the public streets. And yet, the next day, it's like it never happened. Law enforcement didn't seem to be too worried about it. The university obviously didn't condone it, but didn't seem to be ready, willing, and able to send a bunch of people over there and stop that kind of activity. A lot of illegal activity going on, including drugs, including rape, including all kinds of things. Drunk and disorderly in public was one of the most common. And yet, in my opinion, it appears that it still happens on college campuses today. And underage drinking. All those kinds of things. Yet at the same time, if you were to just look at the specifics of the individuals engaged in that, and the fact that they have an association, a formal, open association with certain individuals, and not all of them, but some of them are engaging in certain illegal activities, and yet at the same time it's condoned by the group. And also, more importantly, why is society not addressing that?
Right. And that's a lot of what our university is about, is really trying to look at issues on like all different levels. Maybe you can come down and see us sometime, but it's
I only go where I'm invited. Okay. So if you would like to invite me, I'll be more than happy to engage with either the students or the faculty or both, or what have you.
Well, we are all about dialogue. We are all about, it's basically, do you know our mission statement?
Not on.
Basically about producing global citizens, and it's liberal arts. It's around world peace, like that. It sounds kind of like, oh, that's nice, but we all work really hard to get involved in this type of thing and to learn as much as we can, to see all the little details, and we understand that it's not as easy as
And why would you want to do all that? To what end?
Why? Oh, we all just want to make a really big change in the world.
So by dialoguing and writing papers and coming to meetings like this, is that the end, or is that the means?
No, that's preparing us.
Okay. Then what are you going to do?
That's preparing us. We all have different, life missions, I guess. There's a lot of students that are going into economics just because they want to bring a sort of a humanistic view into the economic scene. People going to business, and there's people that are going into healing arts, they're going into medicine, they're going into community activism, nonprofit areas, things like that.
Well, one of the things that I want to warn you is that I believe that as long as you keep an open mind and you continue to try to follow your heart and your, I hate to use this word because it's so misused, your own morals and things of that nature, and as you develop who you are, especially at this great time in life, all school and no work. Just kidding, because it's all going to be all about work later. I think it's important that you understand that you never know what your roles are going to be. And I say roles because in everything that you do, it's not one-dimensional. If you become a police officer, it's not one-dimensional. If you become the President of the United States, it's certainly not one-dimensional. If you become a professor, if you become whatever it is you do, it's not one-dimensional. So please understand that the roles that you end up involved in may seem so foreign and different to what you think you're preparing yourself for. When I was a student at UC Santa Barbara, I was an electrical engineering student. I never ran for office in kindergarten, middle school, high school. In college, I never wanted to be part of a board or president of this or vice president or secretary of that. It was never my want or I never gravitated toward it. And the first time I ever ran for office was when I was 31 years old. I came to the decision, along with the permission of my wife, to run for the state legislature. I had never walked a precinct before in my life for anybody, nor myself. And all kinds of elements were, if you looked at my resume, you would have said, like the Los Angeles Times formally said during that campaign, that Tony Cardenas is not going to be a state legislator. And I ran for office, and in 1996, I became a state legislator. If you would have asked me 1,000 times throughout my life until the day I decided to run for office, if you would have asked me, are you ever going to be an elected official, I would have said unequivocally, no. No way, not going to happen. You'll never see me do that. And yet at the same time, here we are. And I'm stuck here.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. We really appreciate that. And that's a lot of the reasons why we're going to a liberal arts college, is we want to learn a little bit about, as much as we can, because we understand that it's not just black and white, like you said. No matter what we do, it'll take a lot of knowledge about a lot of stuff. So.
Okay. Well, you're always welcome to dialogue with me or attempt to dialogue with any elected official. I know what I do and how I respond to people wanting to dialogue with me, so you're welcome to do so. We are still on the record, and I'm doing this on purpose. I could have closed the committee and let everybody go home, but I do value your comments, and I think it's important for people to understand that, and it's great to see people, at your age and with your energy to come, and either it's curiosity or a profound feeling that you just had to be here, or whatever brought you here. I think it's important for people to understand that you are listening and you're part of the process. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else here for general public comment? Okay, general public comment is now closed. This committee is now adjourned.